All right. Thank you, alums, for joining us today and taking the time to share your wisdom and insights and advice with our current Benny Johnny students. What we're going to do is start with some brief introductions. So if you could just start with your name and your current job title, and then what we'll do is we'll work through a whole series of questions kind of about what you're doing right now, and then a little bit about how you got to where you're at now, and then looking forward as to what your own career or what your career field is expecting. So why don't we start with Susie? Do you want to start name and current position?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Susie Adams. I'm class of 2016. My current job title is a strength and conditioning coach for the U.S. Army. Did I answer all of them? Yeah.
You did great.
Okay, perfect.
All right, Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina. I was St. Ben's class of 2014, and I am the head athletic trainer of University of Wisconsin River Falls.
Excellent. Beth?
Hi, I'm Beth Schroeder, and I'm a physical therapist, and I was St. Ben's class of 2006.
Excellent. And Luke?
Hello, everyone. My name is Luke. I graduated in 2013, and I'm currently a research scientist down at the University of Minnesota.
Excellent. All right. So the first question is, tell us a little bit about your roles and responsibilities, as well as the type of people that you work with and the types of environments that you work in. And so we're just going to go reverse order now. So Luke, if you want to start.
Sure. So I'm in an academic research lab. So our lab is pretty small. There's, I think there's 6 of us. So ranging from undergraduate students all the way up to people doing their postdoc. So postdoc is basically what you do after a PhD, just to continue on with your training until you eventually go on to either run your own lab or stay as a staff scientist. Yeah, so my day-to-day varies quite a bit. I do a lot of experiments, a lot of assay development. We're a mouse lab, so I manage our mouse colonies. So a lot of like really basic biochemistry, physiology, science, but with an exercise component to it, which I can certainly get into a little more later. But we're predominantly a physiology lab. So we do pretty cool stuff. Yeah, it's a pretty small lab. There's other labs on the floor that we interact with. We do a lot of collaborations and such.
Excellent. Beth?
My current job is with Allina Health, and I am a home health physical therapist. I will maybe jump ahead in the question just a little bit. Just to tell you, I worked in a Courage Kenny Sports and Physical Therapy Clinic for over 12 years. So that was your real typical outpatient physical therapy you would imagine with people with overuse injuries, surgeries. We saw a wide range of ages from about 9 years old at times up to kids, high school kids, adults, and geriatrics. And I'm currently working casually because our youngest child was born in January. And so stepping away from the clinic allows a very flexible schedule with home health. The patients don't often want to be seen early in the morning, and I can choose what time to go see them. So if I want to coach hockey on a Saturday morning, I can start my day at 10 a.m. or 1 p.m. And that involves going to see mostly pretty sick people, immobile people. So a contrast from the clinic, variety of ages there as well, but mostly adults and mostly geriatric.
Excellent. Christina?
Well, I work at a college, so I work with college athletes for the most part. We have 17 sports here, so a little bit of everything. We do everything from getting kids ready from practice with tape to preventative things and prehab and a lot of rehab, a lot of post-op rehab, The only thing we really send away every time is nerves and spine stuff, but otherwise we pretty much handle all of it in-house as we're not too busy. Day to day, working a lot with college kids. I also teach a class, so there's that aspect. And then coaches and the admin staff.
Excellent. Susie.
So I am on an Army base down in Texas. So I am working with Army guys most of the time and girls. So anyone from the age of 17 to probably mid 50s, 60s is probably the oldest I've worked with. But realistically, the Army population is pretty general population, so it's nothing super crazy unless you're with the Special Forces or the Air Force, but Army is pretty average Joe. And then I also work on a team with 30 other, I guess, practitioners to some degree. So I work with physical therapists, athletic trainers, dietitians, occupational therapists, and techs of all of those fields as well. So as a team, we are H2F, or Army Holistic Health and Fitness. And then I also work with 13 other strength and conditioning coaches. So there is a team of 13 of us strength and conditioning coaches, and then the other, however, handful of many people there. But we work with the Army population day in, day out.
Excellent. So looking out at the audience, any questions at this point for our panelists? Seeing no hands, we'll move on to our next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Question, yeah.
This is a question for Luke. Is it, you stated already, like you just do general research at the U of M, but what exactly kind of research do you do?
So this is a question for Luke, pertaining to the type of research that you're doing right now. What are your interest areas?
Sure. So we're a skeletal muscle physiology lab. So we look at the effects of sex hormones on muscle function, muscle regeneration. So what we'll do is we have these genetically modified mice that are basically lacking the receptor for estrogen. So we're looking at the effect of sex hormones on muscle function. So what we'll do is we'll bring a mouse up, take out its muscles, tie it up to this tiny little force transducer in like a bath that's basically representative of the body's condition. So it has all the salts and everything to keep the muscle alive. And then we'll send a little current through there and we'll get a little muscle contraction and we'll measure that force. So then we'll see how does the lack of estrogen affect muscle function. And then we do a couple of other interventions. So we'll do like freeze injuries. So actually go in and apply like a liquid nitrogen cooled metal rod to the muscle to injure it. And then see how lack of estrogen affects the muscle's ability to regenerate. And then we'll look at like muscle strength and do that force production piece again. So that's one main project we have going on right now. With the lab, with a science lab like this, there's always other projects going on too. So every PhD student will have their own project. One student is looking at the effects of high-fat diet on muscle contractility. So they'll get tissue from other labs that are doing high-fat diet studies. So there again is that collaboration piece. So when you're working at somewhere like the U of M, there's a lot of labs do a lot of different stuff, and you can kind of ask around, like go next door, ask for a cup of sugar. You're like, hey, you guys got any high-fat diet-fed mice? And then they'll send some over, we'll get some tissue and do all sorts of stuff with it.
Other questions? Yeah.
Does the research of U of M, does it influence like current medical practices at like hospitals or sports athletic trainers?
So the question pertains to the application of the research findings from your lab. Is there practical applications in medicine or in exercise-related fields?
It's a good question. So when I think of research, I kind of think of it on a spectrum. So you have your like really basic science, like your cellular science. So they're testing drugs or whatever in cells. And then you move on to animal studies. So that's where kind of we fit in. And then you have the more human clinical intervention type stuff. So ours is kind of at the like years and years away from there being a potential clinical application to it.
Okay, moving on. So let's see. Oh, I think I just asked that. So the next question is, what is the best part of your job and why? And then the second part of the question is, if you could wave a magic wand, what part of your job would you change and why? In other words, if there's certain things you don't like or that are frustrating or aggravating for you and you could change, what would that be? And so let's see, I think we ended with Susie, so we'll start with Susie.
Best part of my job, there's a lot of really cool things. At least professionally, what I really like working with is I get to work with soldiers one-on-one. So whether they're just coming out of physical therapy or rehab, or they were carrying a ruck and it was too heavy, whatever it may be, I get to kind of work with them one-on-one and strengthen. And then all of a sudden I'm doing the mobility stuff with them and strengthening with them. And then all of a sudden they can run without pain and they're excited to get back into physical training, so PT in the morning. That's really fun to see, and then like to actually have people respond well to actually training with me. There's a lot of old Army kind of mentality in a lot of what we're doing, so we're a really new program. So usually it's just like a random platoon sergeant that's like, hey, let's go super hard for PT. So having somebody step in as a professional and be like, this is the way you should be doing PT is really hard. So I guess one of the things I don't like is that we have to fight against kind of the grain with everything in the Army, because it has been the way it has been for so long. And so introducing anything more holistic, more well-rounded, eating, sleeping, all of that is really hard to introduce into a tactical population. So that's probably the hardest part, because you are dealing with fields, deployments, all that kind of stuff. So figuring out like actual progressions in any sort of programming is really hard, because they go out to the field and get detrained, and then they have this and then that. So all over the place, but we're working on it. And then not necessarily professional, but also my favorite part is I get to see everything that the Army does. So I get to sit in on some of like their training meetings and like go ride a tank and go see all the drones fly. All that kind of stuff is super cool to see too.
Excellent. And so just a quick caveat, for those of you interested in the strength and conditioning field, there's a whole area of tactical strength and conditioning coaches working with firefighters, police, military. It's a special area within the field of strength and conditioning. So pretty cool. All right. Oh. So Christina, the question, because I almost forgot what the question is. Best part of the job and why, wave your magic wand, change something, what would it be and why?
Perfect. So the best part is definitely helping kids rehab through, whether it's helping them get back from just an ankle sprain that's limited them for like a week, or help that kid get all the way back from an ACL surgery and get them back on the field and watching them play again is definitely my favorite part. But honestly, the relationships we build when we have those day-to-day interactions have been pretty fun, and I definitely enjoy that aspect of it the most. If I could get rid of anything, it'd be documenting. Documenting's the worst. I hate it so much. Followed secondarily, like anything dealing with insurance. Insurance is terrible. Documenting's terrible. Just that all around.
Beth.
Okay, I would agree with Susie and Christina. The best part of my job is helping people. Physical therapy is a helping profession, and I haven't seen any recent data, but I know historically physical therapy rates high on that job satisfaction scale, and I think it has a lot to do with it being a helping profession. I like the one-to-one ability to help people. When I was at St. Ben's, I thought a little bit about coaching and teaching, and I just was my preference to do more of a one-on-one teaching thing, which is what you do in rehab most of the time, unless you're kind of teaching a patient and their family something. And there's a lot of little things I'd probably want to change. Like Christina said, insurance is a headache, things like that. But I just wish I could change the cost of the education to become a physical therapist. When I talk to younger folks, I can't say enough about the profession. You can work with anybody from babies to old, really old people. I saw a patient who was 101, I think, on Saturday, and she was she's got out of the hospital and she was rocking it. Like, she's not going to need a lot of therapy, and it just blows my mind. But to become a physical therapist, the schooling is long and expensive, so you just kind of have to have a plan to attack that. So I wish there was a maybe less expensive way to become a PT, but there's not as far as I know of. So I think that covers it.
And look,
All right, so I'll give you two best things with my job. The one more applied piece is I just like science. I like figuring out, like working on an assay, something goes wrong again, something goes wrong the next day. But eventually you figure it out and it works, and you're like, yes, got it, optimized. That feeling is very, very nice. So that's the big thing I like about science. The other best thing is just the work-life balance. I only work 4 days a week. I get to pick which day of the week I get off. Working in academia is super flexible, super laid back. I get to have like 4-day weekends if I want to go pursue my interests. And work isn't like the center of everything, which is, for me, that's huge. So that's definitely the number one thing I like about my job. If I could change something, working with mice, we have to get the muscle out, and to get the muscle out, you have to euthanize a mouse. I don't like doing that. That's just the nature of the beast, though. So can't really get around it. That's just kind of how it is, unfortunately.
great. All right, audience questions?
If it's okay, all right with them, would they all be willing to say what their salary is?
That might be, can you maybe give a starting range for somebody in your position? What would be a typical starting salary for somebody doing a job like you? And so if you feel comfortable, or if you don't know, that's perfectly fine as well. So Luke, do you know?
Yeah, so for my title, my position, the range that they give you, I think, and it's pretty wide, and it's like university dependent, but I think it's let's see, I think it's like 50 to 80, 50 to 100 or something like that. And it really just depends on the experience you have, how long you've been there, that kind of stuff. But that being said, like, you got to go to school for a while. So it's a long road, but it does pay off in the end.
Yeah.
I'll give you a few numbers. I'm sorry, I don't know the current numbers. My husband is a physical therapist who works full-time with over 13 or 12 years experience, and his salary is in the range of $70,000. I am currently in a pay per visit role, so I have no benefits or anything like that. And I don't get paid for my time to drive to and from. So to see one home visit, I get about $85 before tax. For one physical therapy evaluation, I get about maybe $111 or $120 before tax. And I think my salary was somewhere around $40,000 to $45,000 when I worked 3 to 4-ish days a week, so less than full time.
Christina.
I'm going to apologize now. This is a very weird answer. Athletic training is in a very, very weird spot. We are just switching from an undergrad to a master's degree, so there should be a pay bump for that. We got overutilized by a lot of colleges during COVID, so there was a large amount of burnout. And as we've switched to the master, there is a slight athletic trainer shortage now. So with all that being considered, our salaries are currently and starting to jump heavily. There has been ones in the past where it's like a GA position and you get your master's and whatever, and you get the $12,000 stipend, and it's absolutely terrible. For most, you get a 10-month contract, and at a college setting, it's a 10-month contract and it's about 35-ish, but that's been bumping up for most places to like 40-ish. I'm actually hired and employed by TCO, and I contract out to River Falls with a lot of staff, and it's changing to a lot of models that way. So I get a lot better benefits, and that bumped my assistants up to the upper 50s, and I'm in 60s with that. And then it really depends, because high school is a little less, but they teach sometimes too. So it's kind of all over the place, but it's currently kind of bumping up a little bit though. Sorry if that was weird.
Susie?
It really depends on where you go and what you do as a strength and conditioning coach. In the tactical realm, it depends on the company that you go with. So there's a couple different companies out there. One company is paying 70, 80,000, but you have to have your master's in something as well as your CSCS, all that kind of stuff. And you can work in the US or you can work elsewhere around the world, and they'll give you stipends for all of that. And you're making close to 115. If you're looking at a position that I'm in specifically, it ranges again by the company that you're with. So the specific contract that we have has X amount of money, and then that contract basically like spewed it out to like 6 or 7 different companies, and those companies choose what we get. So there are 15 strength coaches on staff, and our salaries range from low 40s to mid 50s. So we're all doing the exact same job, but there's a 15,000 range basically between what we get paid. So it kind of depends on the company that you find and who you talk to. And then again, as you go into like college area, that kind of stuff, your hours are a little bit different, salary is going to be a little bit different, so it changes up from here and there. But with us, we're contractors, so we only work 40 hours a week, in, out, done, and your salary's decent.
Other questions?
This is for Christina. What's the difference in being an athletic trainer for a college or high school and a pro team?
So Christina, this question's for you. What's the difference in being an athletic trainer for a college versus a high school versus a pro team?
It's a lot about autonomy, decision-making, and work-life balance. At a high school, you're working mainly evenings, because you work when the events are. So at a college setting, you're kind of all over the place. Typically at a high school, unless you're at a bigger high school or somewhere in Texas, you're by yourself. So you don't get a ton of rehab opportunities, and it's more event coverage and being available to diagnose and kind of refer as needed. At the college, we do all of our rehab in-house, again, except the big ones that we can't. And we definitely don't just work 40 hours a week. We definitely work longer. We definitely work nights. We definitely work weekends. You can't work a football game if you're not at the football game on Saturday. So that's kind of hard. But we have been working towards more work-life balance and like finding times off and doing what we need to do. At a professional setting, work-life balance isn't a thing necessarily. If you're working with the Minnesota Vikings, you are working for the Minnesota Vikings. Whenever they want to practice or a guy wants a treatment, you're coming in. You're not telling Adam Thielen, hey, no, I can't come in and let you come take an ice bath right now. I'm busy, because he's worth millions of dollars in that contract. So you get a little less autonomy, and then every decision you make there is kind of checked over and worked with people. Like we work together all the time, but there's a little more oversight from doctors all the time. So it kind of just, and it varies very much from school to school and the people you're working with. And then in the college setting, in the high school setting, you don't work in the summer. I work a little bit in the summer as the head, doing paperwork and admin things to catch up on things I've definitely put off during the school year. But my assistants don't. And then during professional sports, you do get some off time postseason, but it's not as much as everyone thinks, because you still have people coming in and working out, and you still have guys who had surgery who need to get better and need to recover. So I wouldn't personally want to work in the professional sports world, because I kind of want to have a life, but to each their own.
Other questions? Okay, so moving on then. So the next question, the students in this class are going to be doing a project where they are going to pick a career field that they're interested in and do some exploration of that field. But they're also going to learn about themselves through a number of questionnaires and things, learn about their values, their preferences, their strengths, their gifts, and then they're going to overlap the two of what they bring to the world versus what the career or the profession needs of them. So in that kind of thought, what knowledge, skills, or qualities are critical for somebody in your field to be successful? Okay. And let's see, I don't remember which, I think we left, so Luke, I think we're starting with you this time. I don't remember. We'll start there.
Sure. Number one, critical thinking for sure. You have a lot of, that's what half of science is, figuring out what's going wrong with your experiment, with your assay, and troubleshooting. So if you have that kind of mindset of liking to figure out how things work and getting things to work, science is a pretty good choice, I think. Got to be, let's see, what else? Got to be pretty adaptable because science changes quite a bit. There's always different ways to attack a question. So being open-minded, being able to implement some of those new things. And then I guess there's definitely a social component too. Like I said, there's a lot of collaboration involved in science. If you're a better collaborator, you're more successful as a scientist. So those social skills are also important. When a lot of people think of scientists, they think of awkward ladies or dudes in white coats, which there's definitely some of that, not gonna lie. But you got to be able to talk with people and collaborate and get work done together.
Excellent. Yeah.
I think physical therapy is that blend of knowing the movement science. You need to know the science, the rehab science, but then you also need to know how to interact with people, how to motivate people, or more so how to teach people how to motivate themselves, because you're only going to see that person for a short time, assess what they need, and help them convince themselves to do it and how to do it correctly. And then, of course, things like, you know, all those skills you learn at St. Ben's and St. John's from taking hard coursework like time management. In my current role, it's a lot of independent work. I go out by myself, so I'm really at the mercy of, you know, messaging someone questions or emailing or knowing how to utilize all the resources on my computer, because every patient and situation can be a little different. And I'm totally by myself out there. So that blend of your training and using technology as best you can.
Great. Christina.
I would agree a lot with what Beth said. It's a lot of getting buy-in from people. It doesn't matter how smart you are in a rehab setting. If you can't get your patient to understand what you're saying, what you need them to do, or to buy into the treatment, or even get coaches to like agree why warm-ups are important and why stretching matters, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it's not going to get done well. So you have to have that personality skills and that skill set to talk to and relate to people to build those relationships. The other big one for athletic training is work well under pressure. No matter how well you try to time out everything, there is inevitably always an emergency somewhere, or every single kid has to have something done immediately right before practice or the game, or they won't be able to play. And it's all, we always call it organized chaos. It is organized chaos at its finest. Pressure situations, being able to handle that is very important.
And Susie.
all of everything that they said. A lot with strength and conditioning. There is a lot coming out all the time of different theories and what's the best way to strengthen condition or anything along those lines. So being able to kind of keep up with the science and reading and researching and collaborating with all the other coaches. I think that's the coolest part of my job is that like I get, well, I got not the coolest, but some of the coolest part is that I get to work with a bunch of coaches and everybody has a little bit different philosophy. So learning from one another, being willing to learn from somebody else. And then specifically in the tactical realm that I am in, being patient is really, really, really important. Being consistent and patient, because you're going to have people who are super, super interested in what we're doing and they want to utilize us. And then you're going to have people who have zero interest whatsoever. And then kind of on the backside, more admin side, like as strength and conditioning coaches, we don't have a single piece of equipment that we are allowed, quote unquote, to use. So we have each like unit has a beaver, like a gym in a box, basically, that like travels with them when they get deployed and all that kind of stuff. And that's the equipment that we get to use. So being able to be adaptable in not only like your surroundings and your situation, but also in your like your programming, being able to be creative. I think that's the coolest part that people don't really think of when you think of strength and conditioning, but is being creative with the tools and the resources and the environment that you have. Additionally, like I couldn't do this at work because we don't have any Wi-Fi, we don't have any cell service, we don't have hard lines into anything. So I had to come back home to even get any of that. So being patient with the Army base as well, because with all the intel and all that kind of stuff, they shut off a lot of that communication, which is super fun.
Great. So questions?
To be a lecturer, how do I develop good social skills? Or what should I do to develop good social skills for my job?
Excellent question. So many of you talked about communication and being able to relate to your patients, your clients, or colleagues, or somebody. How does a student at St. Ben St. John's develop those social skills? What can students here be able to do to make that happen? And so let's start with Susie, and we'll work back the other way again.
Honestly, I've found that I've got a lot of my like comfortability as far as coaching and all of that from actually getting in front of somebody and coaching. I don't know if this question will maybe come up later, but I started doing group fitness before I got into strength and conditioning. And with that group fitness, you kind of have to be this bubbly person in front of everybody, encouraging them, telling them what to do, and being super concise with everything. And actually taking that into what I'm doing now. Like I'm super comfortable standing up in front of somebody and be like, oh, hey, we're squatting, we're sending our hips back, feet shoulder width apart, blah, 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 blah. But even practicing like while you're in the gym with a buddy and be like, hey, try this when you're doing your exercise or something along those lines, or like activate your core in this way instead of this. Do you feel a difference type of thing? I think a lot of it is experience as far as getting comfortable there. And then don't just stay on your phone all the time. I think that's a really big thing is like when you're around, when you're with people, like when you're in Gretzky or wherever you are, you're sitting there and you're not just like in your phone, you're like actually having some sort of flow of conversation with people. You're not just like in the zone all the time with that device. I think that's going to be helpful.
Christina?
I would agree with all of that. I think one of those yourself in slightly uncomfortable conversations and talk to people. Join an intramural team with some people, some friends of a friend, and make a new friend. Or the best way we learn to accept and understand other people better is talking to people we don't know and learning stuff from people we don't know. So join clubs, join groups, find a way to talk to people you don't know, volunteer to be in someone's study, because eventually you need volunteers for a study. And there's always downtime in studies. You're doing weird things and there's small talk time, and just start learning how to do the small talk. I know it's dumb and sounds annoying, but a lot of like building relationships with strangers is starting to make people feel comfortable around you. And that happens in small talk. If you can just ask kids how their day is and ask them how classes are going every single day, they'll start to open up to you eventually, and then they're more comfortable sharing.
So besides the great things that Susie and Christina shared, I think there's so many great jobs you can have before you settle into your career. I think I worked as a waitress, server, hostess, and it's like the best world of multitasking and talking to people you would never talk to normally if you weren't waiting on their table. And then to really consider a job like a CNA position, even if you don't want to be a nurse or ever work in a nursing home or a hospital in your career, it's such a great way to learn who patients are, what they need, and get great healthcare experience without having to, get a 4-year or a doctorate degree to get your hands on some patient care and some great experience. Like Susie, I coached in the summers in college. And so that made me get up in front of groups of kids, high school, middle school kids, and sometimes their parents, sometimes their high school coaches. And it's any new experience is uncomfortable. So the more you do it, the more comfortable you get.
Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything they said. I won't repeat it all. Just practice, get yourself out there, get in uncomfortable situations. When you're on the link, sit by someone you don't know and start a conversation. When you're in the dining hall, go sit by someone you don't know and start a conversation. It's those little things like that. And if it doesn't go well, whatever. Like, might not see that person again. Like, who cares? So just practice and get uncomfortable.
And quite frankly, in classes at St. Ben's and St. John's, you will have to talk. We don't have 500 seat lecture halls where you can sit all by yourself and never have to say a word. You will be talking. And so those skills you will develop as part of your education here. But everything that the panelists said, make yourself uncomfortable. Join a club that you wouldn't necessarily join. Talk to people that you wouldn't necessarily talk to. Any waitressing, I mean, my goodness gracious, you have to be able to talk to people. Your tips depend upon your ability to make an instant connection with that person that's coming into the restaurant. These are great opportunities to build those skills. And just as a quick side note, I'll kind of jump forward a little bit. These are the same skills that grad schools will ask you about. So they will ask you about what your summer job was. If you put down a waitress, so what? There's nothing special about being a waitress. But if you say, I was a waitress, and because of this, I ended up developing great interpersonal skills. I can develop a connection with people quickly, problem solving. I can resolve conflict. Oh my goodness, that is gold to your graduate school education, your graduate school admission units. So absolutely everything that the panelists said. All right, so questions, any other questions here? I'm gonna kind of jump around a little bit on my list of questions because we've kind of addressed a few of them already. Let's go and think about your experience here at St. Ben's and St. John's. What courses or academic experiences, or even non-academic experiences, were most meaningful for you, that kind of formed who you are? And then the same thing with things outside of the academic realm. Is there certain experiences that you had that are like, that really impacted my life? And so let's start with Luke.
Yeah, for me, just the job I'm in right now, doing research at St. Ben's, St. John's was huge. And they offer a lot of opportunity for that, so take advantage. Actually, Christina was one of my research subjects for my senior capstone project. Got to eat sodium bicarbonate and do some exercise, which was super fun. Yeah. Do not do that. The benefits do not outweigh the consequences. but yeah, just like going to scholarship and creativity day, presenting there was huge, just to practice those communication skills, like communicating your science. So that's really the big one for me. As far as outside of academia, honestly, just like the social aspect, like you're in college, like, yeah, you're going there to get a degree, but there's more to college than that. And I think those things outside of the classroom are equally, if not more important than the actual coursework. Because certainly, like, I use some of the knowledge and skills that I gained in the courses, but like, I don't remember like a lot of the specific information. It's more gaining those skills, like gaining those critical thinking skills, gaining those communication skills that are going to be applicable to really any job that you go to. And a lot of those skills you can pick up outside the classroom as well.
Great. Beth?
I guess it was Don that gave me the advice to kind of study more for your major, study for your career. Don't worry about every little test, every little answer on a test. The information you need to know will come around again. So just enjoy that whole learning process. And man, I'll try to keep this to 30 seconds because I loved everything about St. Ben's. I played varsity sports and had super great friends and roommates, and I would give anything to live in a dorm again where your friends are like just down the hall. I know that sounds crazy, but now it takes a lot of coordinating just to get together with friends, and anything you can be involved in, go for it. For me, it was sports, and I was really appreciative of the sports med minor. The awesome major that you all might get to have did not exist way back when I was at St. Ben's, and so I'm super jealous of that. I have classmates who are super jealous of that, and the lab and everything. So soak in all the opportunities in the classroom and outside, because the 4 years will go fast.
Stina?
I would agree with everything they both said. I was also a varsity athlete, loved it. It was a blast, met some of the best people there. But honestly, most of my best friends I met when I was randomly assigned to them in classes. And the friend whose house I'm in the basement that was closer to where I needed to be to do this conference, we had 3 or 4 classes together freshman year randomly. I actually asked her at the end of the second day, like, are you following me, or like, why are you in all of my classes? So yeah, all of the social things, like join an intramural team. There's so much fun. Like, nowhere else do you get to like play sports like that or be active like that. Join people's research. We're all into science, and if your friends aren't all science major, they're gonna get really nerdy. They're gonna get really annoyed of all the times you get really nerdy and excited. So find a way where you can express your passion about your nerdy things. For me, that was volunteering to be in all of the research studies, because then you get to just nerd out for a little bit. But like, find a place where you get to do what you love doing and just be a nerd. And definitely do all the fun social things.
I mean, obviously I agree with all of that kind of stuff. I was also varsity sports through my 4 years. I think some of the best things that I actually still use were from the course that Don teaches, basically prepping you for the CSCS exam, where you actually go through each of the main movements and you take the app out, you record, and then you can actually like break down the angles of each like leg piece, all that kind of stuff. And then you can practice actually coaching through all of that. I want to say it was through Coach's Eye or something along those lines. But that was really helpful. And I program every single day of my job now. So that's really helpful. The other class that I really enjoyed was, I had a very love-hate relationship with this class, but it was like a gender and ethics in sports class that Jana used to teach. And it was really cool because it forced me very much so outside of my comfort zone. I was, I think, the only female in that class, and it was just a bunch of guys. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. But then it also forced me outside of my comfort zone as far as like, she had us actually go out and volunteer in the neighborhood and the community. So I got to go to like Boys and Girls Club, and that kind of helped me kind of get extra outside of my comfort zone, because when you went to go volunteer, you went by yourself, so you didn't have a buddy to go with. It was just, hey, here's the situation, and you're gonna go try to interact with these people. So that's probably another way that you could get some of those social skills, is through some of those classes.
Excellent. Questions?
What made you want to choose like your guys' majors when you were at St. Ben's and St. John's?
So the question is, how did you discern what to major in when you were here at St. Ben's and St. John's? And so let's see. Let's start with Susie, and we'll work our way backwards again.
Okay. Freshman year, I started nursing. I didn't get a good enough grade in microbiology. So sophomore year, first semester, I wanted to do something engineering. So I did all the physics, the calc, all of that kind of stuff. That didn't really stick. So I ended up going with nutrition, because I did enjoy that class freshman year. So I went nutrition, and then exercise science sports studies as my minor. So it was kind of a trial and error for the first year and a half. But by the time kind of December rolled around, I was pretty set on nutrition with exercise science sports studies minor, which I don't know if that exists anymore.
This is the last year, but yes. So phased out as the new major and the new curriculum is fully implemented this year.
So jealous.
All right, Christina.
That major probably would have helped with my indecisiveness. I came into college thinking I was going to be Dr. Shepard from Grey's Anatomy and a brain surgeon. And then I realized that's 12 years of college. So just switched to regular med school because that's so much less. So I was a biochem major, and I made it through the first year with that, but I was injured a lot and spent a lot of time in the training room. And I spent a lot of time in Don's office talking about how I hate school, essentially, pretty much, and just like the human side of things. Then I hated studying plants that second semester of bio. Literally could not have any less interest in plants than I do. And he's like, there's like this other major that you could talk about, like exercise science minor. It's called nutrition. You could just learn about the human body. And I'm like, oh my God, amazing. I hate plants. So then I switched to that and a PT, and then I went to shadow PT. Wherever you want to go shadow it. I was convinced I wanted to be a PT. And then I followed someone around in the clinic, and they helped someone with like 6 knee replacements and shoulder total replacements in one day. And I'm like, oh, I am way too ADD to be in this environment. I will scare old people. I cannot be here. And then Don's like, you work in the athletic training room. You could be an athletic trainer. And I'm like, wow, that's genius. So like, A, make a good relationship with your advisor and just overshare everything, and B, shadow where you're going to go. But I ended up being nutrition major with an exercise science minor through lots of changes.
So quick caveat, Christina, this is the second year you've done this panel, and both years you have the memorable quote. This year is going to be, I scare old people. Last year, it was, I hot Cheetos for breakfast. I still remember that.
I still have hot Cheetos for breakfast.
Okay, so just check. Okay. So, Beth, how did you decide on your major?
Oh boy, there was not a major for me at St. Ben's and St. John's. I was undecided coming in. I was leaning towards pre-physical therapy, but I wasn't sure. So luckily, Don Fisher was my college strength and conditioning coach, and he taught many of the, at the time it was called, I'm sorry, Don, what were those classes called? Sports medicine minor classes. And so instead of transferring, I also didn't want to take a ton of plant biology. Nothing against bio, it's usually interesting, but I knew I was gonna go more the human movement route. And so I had to be a liberal studies major, and one concentration was in something like natural sciences, where I got all my prerequisites in for physical therapy school plus sports med courses. And my other concentration was in Spanish, so that I could study abroad and take a few extra Spanish classes, because I didn't want to be a Spanish major. I couldn't fit in Spanish double major type of situation with all of the labs that we have to take. And so that's what happened with that major. It might not exist, but essentially I would have jumped right into that health sciences major that is available now.
And Luke,
Yeah, so I came into college thinking I was going to study psychology and philosophy. Took an intro course in each and quickly realized that was not the move. I always liked working out, playing sports, so I was like, oh, let's take some sports medicine classes and nutrition, and really liked that. And like all these three, I sat down with Don, sat down with Mary, old Amy, an old nutrition professor, and they just kind of guided me towards more of this human route, human biology. So I ended up majoring in nutrition, thinking I was going to go to PT school, but like Christina, I shadowed. I got in there and realized it wasn't for me. So I will echo her advice that getting like, you don't really know until you're in it. Like, get out there. If you think you want to do something, go out there, call someone up, be like, hey, can I come shadow you? Most people are going to be more than happy to do so. They were all in your shoes once. So they'll be very willing to do that. Yeah, let's see, I was on the pre-PT track for a while, decided not to do that. And then I took an exercise physiology course and just absolutely loved it. So then I kind of switched my focus to that and decided to go do a master's after. And then doing like the research side of things, I got to get into more of the science side of things. So then I kind of coupled the two, doing exercise and science, like getting down to the nitty gritty details. So I just kept going to school. And now I'm ended up in a science lab working 30 hours a week doing exercise, basic science research. And it's pretty cool. So kind of a ping pong way to get here, but the more people I meet, the more people I talk to, it's rarely a straight line from where they think they're going to go originally to where they end up. So don't be afraid to get out and try new stuff and get into the clinic, get into the whatever, and just really see if that is what you like.
excellent advice. Again, there is no one path. Everybody's on their own journey. The path that you get to whatever your end is going to be is going to look different than the person that's at the same end as you. Want to put a quick plug in for the XPD office. So we have a number of programs that can help to link you to our graduates that are doing the type of work that you might be interested in. So it might initially be an exploration where you have a conversation with an alum that is working in your field to see, kind of like what we did here, what's the best part of your day? What's the part of the day that you'd like to wave your magic wand and change? Go through what we call an informational interview to learn about what that person is doing. And then there are opportunities to potentially go and spend time with the alum in a clinic or a gym or whatever, a research lab or wherever it might be that the alum is working. So the Benny Johnny network is real and it is very strong, and it is something that you're going to want to access over your 4 years here. So let's see what time we got. We have, it looks like we have 2 minutes left. So let's do this. Last thought, 30 seconds or less. Anybody want to throw out any advice, any last thought for the Benny Johnny students here? Popcorn.
All right. Shadow somewhere. Talk to people you don't know. Join as many things as you can. College is 4 years of fun you'll never get back. Experience them and enjoy it. But definitely the network is real. Half my jobs I've gotten, definitely the interviews I get, is not because of what I know. We all look the same on paper, on resume. It's who you know. So make those connections and don't be afraid to use them.
I guess I'll jump in. The other thing that I would say on top of all of that would be, don't be afraid to, if you don't like what you do right when you get out of college, do something else. Like, don't be afraid to kind of jump ship and go somewhere else. There are a ton of different fields within this whole exercise range that you can jump back and forth between. So if you don't like something the first time, try something else.
Network, network, network.
I guess just enjoy your time. Like they said, 4 years goes fast, and just a little plug for the healthcare field. As a population, we're still kind of doing sick care, not healthcare. So I think know that if you go into healthcare, exercise science, fitness, medicine, I think there's going to be a job for you. And you can help a lot of people, whether it's in the public health realm all the way to a one-to-one provider, athletic trainer, nurse, doctor. In any way we slice it, we're going to need a lot of healthcare going forward in this country.
All right. Thank you, alums. We greatly appreciate your time. So first of all, round of applause.